The 17 News at Sunrise podcast is brought to you by Clinica Sierra Vista.
Welcome back to the 17 News at Sunrise podcast, where we share your news on your schedule.
Working in the spirit of the Golden Empire, this is 17 News at Sunrise.
Good morning to you. It's 5 a.m. Thanks for waking up with us on this Thursday. I'm Maddie Jansen alongside Alex Fisher.
We begin with your 17 Court Watch and an emotional day for the families of 3 young men killed in a New Year's Eve crash in 2020. The driver, Adam Teasdale, was under the influence when he swerved off the road and hit a tree, killing all of his passengers. Teasdale was sentenced to 6 years in prison yesterday, but he will likely be free in about 6 months. 17's Michaela Armstrong has more.
Adam Teasdale was emotional as members of the victims' families expressed the pain they feel since the tragic night when Teasdale drove intoxicated with 3 passengers in the car. Teasdale drove after a night of celebration on New Year's Eve in 2020, then swerved off Brimhall Road and hit a tree, killing his 3 friends, Timothy Wilson, Devin Atha, and Andrew Ortiz, all 20 years old. Some parents who spoke said after 3 years, they now forgive Teasdale.
My heart also hurts for you and your family.
But some said that Teasdale stole moments they will never get again.
Everything you get to do as an adult and a father and a grandfather and a child, you stole that day.
Teasdale was sentenced to 6 years in prison and has already served 2.5 years. With custody credits and time served, he will serve about 6 more months before he is released, upsetting some of the victims' families.
And 2 years for the lives of 3 people that could have on average lived for 70 years, that doesn't make sense. And I don't think anybody would do that to their friend if they truly felt guilty.
The Deputy District Attorney Casey Barrier says she hopes Teasdale's sentencing will bring each of the families closure.
With the circumstances in the case we had, it's resolved to the best that it can under the circumstances. Someone being convicted and someone being sentenced to prison is going to provide some level of closure in the sense of they can move past this phase of what happened with their lives. That won't stop the grieving, it won't stop the pain that they feel, but at least it will stop this part of it and they can move forward from the criminal aspect of it.
Michaela Armstrong, 17 News.
Also in court yesterday, an infamous and convicted rapist who served 3 decades in prison for crimes committed in Sacramento. 71-year-old Ronald Feldmeyer is now being accused of kidnapping a woman in Bakersfield. He entered a plea deal of not guilty and is being held without bail. Feldmeyer became known as the pillowcase rapist for using pillowcases to stifle his victims' screams during sexual assaults committed in the 1980s. He moved to Bakersfield after being released from prison back in 2019. Police say he was arrested after a woman he was driving with became concerned for her safety, repeatedly asking him to stop the car and let her out. Feldmeyer allegedly refused, so the woman jumped out of a moving car.
Both sides have arrested in the trial of a former CHP officer charged in an online sex sting. Closing arguments are expected later this morning. Brian Pardue is charged with 2 felonies in connection with exchanging sexually graphic messages on a dating app with a person who said they were 16. Pardue may have to register as a sex offender if he is found guilty.
An off-duty Arvin police officer has been arrested. He was accused of being drunk in public. Ruben Gonzalez was taken into custody back in April on Panorama Drive near Bakersfield College. Gonzalez has since pleaded no contest. He is a 16-year veteran with the department. The chief released a statement calling the arrest an isolated incident, adding it does not reflect the great work of the men and women of the Arvin Police Department. Gonzalez remains on paid administrative leave. Making news around the world this morning, we're finding out more about the Titan sub that imploded in the Atlantic Ocean last week, killing its 5 passengers. Crews have recovered some of the wreckage of that sub, and they believe there are human remains inside. You can see the crane lifting the submersible's nose cone and pieces of its hull onto a Canadian Coast Guard dock. The remnants of the submersible will now be turned over to investigators to figure out what went wrong. Multiple agencies from the U.S. and Canada are probing the incident.
Making headlines around the nation this morning, and it could be a pretty big day for recent college graduates. That's because the Supreme Court could decide if roughly 43 million Americans can have some of their student loans forgiven. U.S. Education Secretary Miguel Cardona says he is hopeful the justices will side with the Biden administration, allowing the administration to follow through on plans to erase $10,000 of student debt for most eligible borrowers.
shouldn't be fighting to give $10,000 to people who are middle-class people or people who are struggling to make ends meet. The Supreme Court's decision is going to be a critical one.
Those challenging the forgiveness program call it inherently unfair and argue the president abused his emergency powers to create it. The White House will not say what will happen if the court strikes down the forgiveness program. Turning to a big drug bust on I-5, where officers seized nearly 100 pounds of meth. Take a look. These are some photos sent to us by CHP. You can see several heaping bags of meth. CHP says officers pulled over a truck pulling a trailer near Stockdale Highway, the interchange there, for a traffic stop. They asked to search the truck, and with the use of a canine, they found 4 suitcases full of meth. The driver was taken into custody on drug charges.
A local judge who served Kern County for more than 4 decades has died. According to Kern County Superior Court, Judge Ralph Wyatt passed away yesterday. Judge Wyatt worked as a deputy public defender from 1975 to 1981 and worked for several firms before taking the bench. In 2014, Governor Jerry Brown appointed Judge Wyatt to take the seat of retired Judge John Stubbe. His judicial colleagues remember Judge Wyatt as a deep thinker with an incredible thirst for knowledge.
Turning now to one of our signature issues, pedestrian safety. And Bakersfield is getting $10 million to improve a portion of Chester Avenue. The funds are from the RAISE grant program that's expanded under President Biden's infrastructure law. The money will redevelop 1.4 miles of Chester Avenue. It will also help the roadway improvements, better sidewalks, bike lanes, and lighting, as well as stormwater drainage improvements.
All right, with the 4th of July comes the dreaded 5th of July. That's the day our local animal shelters feel the overwhelming weight of being over capacity and are forced to euthanize dogs for lack of space. 17's Cecilia Trevino has more on how you can help.
Around 250 dogs are euthanized in the municipal shelter every year after the 4th of July holidays. In the already at capacity Bakersfield Animal Care Center, around 100 are in desperate need of new homes and are urging people to become foster families.
We have 175 kennels, and right now we have just under 300 dogs that we are having to house. So we're having to put them double and triple up with the smaller dogs if we can.
Tara Nelson says even if it's for a couple of weeks, fostering helps the shelter go through this high intake season. Aleli Caldera was picking up her new foster puppy and says there's no time to waste when it comes to helping.
We're these puppies' lifeline. We're what's keeping them alive from being euthanized by helping the shelters not be overcapacitated.
Caldera says from getting the puppy chipped and vaccinated, the shelter helps foster go smoothly by providing food and toys. You can become a foster family anytime by calling the care center or visiting their website.
Thank you. It's a little messy. And you can also stop by the shelter at 201 South Mount Vernon Avenue. If you have a dog, it's best to keep your pet indoors on the 4th of July and make sure it has a microchip and collar with tag in case it does escape.
Air District officials are cautioning Valley residents against using fireworks this year because of the impact it has on the air we breathe. According to the district, personal fireworks emit high levels of particulate matter, including soot, ash, and metals, which can cause serious health effects. Those most at risk are small children, the elderly, and people with existing respiratory conditions. Each 4th of July, air monitors across the valley reflect a spike in particulate matter, which is often 4 to 5 times higher than the health-based federal standard. Yep.
We all know.
We all know.
Yeah.
It is, as I always say, it looks like a war zone after the 4th of July.
It does. It's just that haze hanging in the air. And then like the firework, like just paraphernalia, the trash just kind of scattered along the streets. So if you are going to celebrate, please do so safely. And just remember about the impact on people who have so many respiratory illnesses like those here in Kern County.
The 17 News at Sunrise podcast is a production of KGET and Nexstar Media Group. For more on all of the headlines in today's show, head to kget.com.